Good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Sujatha Muthanna. While I work for a corporate, my heart is with the soil. And I've just about started something called the Rustic Agro Solutions. The purpose of these conversations, or how these conversations started, was also very interesting. The conversations around rice and paddy. There are a lot of wetlands in Cook, which are probably lying fallow for various reasons. It could be because of not being able to sell some of the paddy that is grown there, or it could be because of not being able to adopt to the technology or the mechanization, and also because it's not really breaking even for some. Okay, so when these conversations were going on in one of the groups, and when we were going back to some of the suggestions that came from some of our elders, they said you've got to go grow paddy. But the question was about why should we grow paddy, right? Aren't there more viable crops, whether it is bamboo or anything else? And then the conversation moved in the direction of tradition and culture, which is also very important. But the youth of today find it more useful to understand what is viable for us, right? Because it's about how do we sustain ourselves? And so I started delving a little deeper to see what is this paddy culture about. And coming from the community, Kodwa community, we rever the soil. There's a lot of activities that we do during our festivals, which start from the soil. Okay, and so we're looking at what is the best way to take these conversations forward and dip into the collective wisdom of our ancestors or some of our elders who are also there to kind of guide us. So with that, this particular conversation around paddy has started. We had the first session the last month where we had Usha, who spoke to us about how they were able to revolutionize a culture of paddy in the Western Ghats, in the Wayanad region, where they were going through similar challenges, whether it was the elephant menace that was disrupting the paddy crop, or with a whole lot of encroachments and issues around real estate and people selling the land and land conversions and all of it, to a lot of the people or the younger generation leaving the land, going away, but not being able to come back and restore their land after many years. So it's the same kind of challenges. So we had Usha speak about how they faced or addressed some of the challenges in the Western Ghats, and they created a culture of bringing back paddy. So that was the talk that we had the last month. And during the course of the conversation, we had a lot of our guests asking us questions around, okay, so now we'll grow paddy. The soil is so fertile, rich in Kodagu. So what can we do differently? How can we grow organic paddy? The conversations were about around paddy. But when we grow organic paddy, what kind of a market, what kind of marketability is actually possible for it? And that's when we spoke. I've known Ananthoo for a while, having visited some of the stores. But what was more important is the kind of work that he has done in this space, right, to bring about some kind of a marketability. So, and hence we've invited Ananthoo to speak with us and share some of his thoughts about the way in which he has gone about the work that he has done in the organic space, or organic food space. Okay. While doing this, I also want to acknowledge our collaborators, some of who would be joining us today, and some of who've been doing some great stuff in Coog itself. Right. To start off with, we have the Cavery Action Network, which is a body which connects the catchment region with the Delta region. We then have the Environment Health Foundation, who is which is anchored by Colonel Muthanna. We had Dr. Kushalappa from the College of Forestry, where they've also been doing a lot of extensive work in the area of paddy cultivation and to restore the paddy cultivation in Kodagu. We have the Seva Rice campaign, which is from Usha, who was our speaker the last month. The Puttari Farmers Producers Cooperative Limited of Kodagu. This is a group of youngsters who have come together to make it possible for a lot of people in Cook to sell their produce. Okay, so this is the FPO out there in Cook. We also have the Koilimini project, and which is, and I want to speak about this Koilimini project very briefly because the person who's anchoring it is out here. But what I wanted to, so the Koilimini project is about growing organic. When we grow organic paddy, it's possible for Koilimini, which is a delicacy, which is a tiny fish of Kodagu found in the wetlands. It's possible for us to harvest that. So in the last couple of years, the amount of koilamina, which was a delicacy, we use it for our pickles and various curries, are not really found everywhere the way we used to find it earlier. So we've kind of grown up with it. It's like an emotion when we talk about the koilamina. So that's not really available now. And it's a very interesting piece that Gopakumar is working on, which is if you grow organic paddy in your wetlands, it's possible for the koilamina to survive. So we then connected all these pieces together and said, if we want to move in the direction of a circular economy, making sure that all of these exist and coexist, we'll probably be in a better position to embrace collective farming. And there's some work that is already being done by some of the groups, and I've mentioned one of them, which is Roots of Kodagu. What this bunch of youngsters do in Coog is they actually go to the different family wetlands of different families, where the wetlands have been lying fallow for a while. And they actually get together the youngsters and not depend on just the workers. The youngsters come together, and the youngsters are from different parts of the world. They've come for a holiday during the monsoon season. In fact, I also joined them this time round, and we go and transplant paddy in somebody's wetlands just to make sure that they are able to retain that particular set of the wetlands that they have. So there are a lot of very interesting work that is being done by Roots of Kodagu as well. So together, there are a lot of interesting happenings in Coog. However, we definitely want to understand from our speaker today, who's Ananthoo, about his expertise in taking the produce forward, not just paddy. While we might want to have a couple of deeper discussions around paddy, any kind of a produce, if we are able to monetize it and if we are able to take it to a larger market, it's going to help a lot of the individuals grow the paddy out here. So these are some of the things that we've been doing in this particular space. We have a long way to go, but the purpose is also to bring all this knowledge together and document it, because this is rich information that we're gathering from SMEs, subject matter experts such as Ananthoo, and a lot of our elder folks who've been working in the paddy fields or have been involved in any kind of farming activity in the past. So this is just a context about what we are doing and what we have done.